It was asking me recently about buying a used trailer. The one behind me is one of our trailers. Obviously, it's a used trailer because we use it. They asked me, they said, well, because I've bought a number of used trailers. I have a bunch of trailers out there that we lease, and they're all used trailers when we buy them. I bought a few new ones, but most of the time I try to buy them used. And trailers are not like cars. Obviously, they don't have motors and transmissions and all this, but they do have some things you have to look out for. A couple of things you got to look out for is the wheel bearings. And how do you know if the wheel bearings are good or bad? Well, you pretty much got to take them apart to find out. But I'm going to show you a couple of things on this trailer right here that'll help you kind of when you look at a used trailer to figure out whether you should buy it or not. So this is a 2021 Lamar. Now we've had this trailer for a while. It's covered hundreds of thousands of miles. So when you're thinking about buying a used trailer, a lot of times they look like this. This is used, so this is what they look like. When you're looking at the trailer, the first thing you want to do is, as you can see, this one has a 3-axle setup, but it has the greasable bearings, right? So it has these covers on here like this, and you want to pop that off and look inside, and all the axles will have one. You want to look inside and see if there's grease in there. If there's only a little bit of grease in there, probably they're not taking care of it. When inspecting the hubs, if it has oil bath, you should be able to see, and I don't have one here right now with an oil bath on it, but there's a sight glass that goes right here on the front, and you can see the oil level. If the oil level's low, then what you need to do, unfortunately, you're going to have to get behind the wheel and look and see if there's any oil on the back of the wheel, because the one thing about oil bath hubs, there's a seal in the back, and that seal can break, it can leak, it can just, dry rot and a lot of other things, and that will cause your bearings to be exposed to not having any lubricant, and when that happens, they can seize up, and all hell can break loose. That wheel and tire, if it comes off their hub and all, that's going to be one heck of a projectile, and you're going to lose your trucking company over that. So again, with the grease wheel bearings, you can pull that cap off and check it, and then you can, but even with the oil baths, you should look at the level. If the level's low, look on the back of it. Even with the greasable ones, it's a good idea to kind of take a look, just bend down and look at the other side of the wheel on the other side, because you can look through from this side and see that side, look from that side and see this side. It's a good idea just to look, but those grease seals on the back of these, they don't usually leak. Now, if somebody's got the wrong lubricant in these axle bearings, it can actually become less viscous and almost turns fluid-like, and it can run right past those seals, so you got to watch that too. Again, if you got grease in there, and I mean grease all the way to the end, right? Not just you can see grease in the bearing, but packed inside of that cap. There should be grease all over inside the cap. If there is, then you know there's no problem. Now, the other thing was, if you look at this, you see how this one is got a lot of grease all over the outside of it? That means that cap right there, and that rubber piece, is leaking, and that's the access to the grease seal, to the grease fitting. If you look at this one, see, there's far less of it, so this one's fairly new. Now, good news is you can buy the whole metal cap, or you can buy those rubber plugs on there off of Amazon for pretty cheap. So that's not going to be a heck of a thing, but it's still a thing. So how do you know if the brakes are good? If somebody's selling you a trailer, they either need to hook their truck up to it, or they got to let you hook your truck up to it, and you want to test the trailer brakes. Same thing like a DOT does to you when you go through a DOT inspection, when you go through one of the weigh stations. You want to hook your trailer up to it, take the weight off your trailer jacks, and then you want to hook into the electrical connector right here. You want to hook that up, to your 7-way, and then check the brakes. Put your truck in drive, depress the brake, hold your gain, and most trucks I'll show you what that looks like on the Ford that I have here. And so when you do that and let your foot off the brake, the trailer should maybe roll forward just a hair and then stop, or you feel it tug on the truck and stop it. Now with nothing on the trailer, depending on the trailer size and weight, it may not stop it. This big boy here, this thing weighs in. So this definitely will stop the truck. Plus it has, 6 tires on the back to do it. But it should at minimum, if you turn your trailer brake gain all the way to the top level, which is usually a 10, and then pinch the thing together, if you have that kind, which most of them do, to test it, it should stop it or at least hold it pretty steady. And then when you let off, it allows things to go forward if the brakes are holding. If they don't hold like that, then you know you have brake problems. Now, could it be electrical? It could be electrical. But let me tell you one other way you can do it. If you have somebody, and it has to be a fairly quiet area, but if you have somebody put their foot on the brake and then you listen real closely to the wheel, you can usually hear a slight buzzing sound coming from the wheel. And what that is, there's a magnet in there and you can hear it buzzing. So if in the truck, you tell them to step your foot on the brake, and then you listen closely to the wheel. If you don't hear it buzzing, there's an electrical problem. But on this one, now this trailer has 6 brakes on it. So you'd want to listen to each one to make sure you're hearing it from each one of the other ones. Now there's a trick you can do with a screwdriver as a stethoscope. If you get a real big long screwdriver and you put your screwdriver up to your ear and hold the screwdriver right here on the hub, just put the screwdriver right there on the hub, and put the screwdriver to your ear. If you do that, you should feel it buzzing in your ear to make sure the brake is working. So you can check all the brakes on it that way. Now the other thing, since it's already hooked up to your truck, you want to check all your lights. Remember, don't just check the lights in the back, because that's important, but any side lighting it has to work. Because if the side lights don't work, if that light right there doesn't work, you can actually get stopped and get a ticket for that side light getting to work. Now if trailer you're buying, like ours, are mostly for hauling vehicles or tractors and stuff. They have winches. Obviously, you want to test the winch. Wherever the battery's at, you want to see how old the battery is. You want to look at the cable on the winch to see how old it looks. You want to run the winch out a little bit. I would say at least 4 or 5 feet out and then 4 or 5 feet back. Don't just turn it on. Make sure you run it out for some, because sometimes those winch cables can be bound up. And if it's bound up, you'll be taking that bad boy apart trying to get it unbound, or doing a whole lot of work anyway. So again, 4 or 5 feet out and then pull it 4 or 5 feet back in. If the battery's dead on the winch, and it would get your battery jump box out that you have in your truck and hook it to the winch battery and try it out, because you definitely don't want to pay money for a winch and it might not work. Now you also want to make sure if it's remote. This has a remote right there that sends the Bluetooth signal to the remote that's in the truck. But you also want to make sure that you plug it into the manual plug. There's a manual plug right there on the side. You want to plug it into the manual plug and make sure that pin works too, because you want to make sure that the pin works, because if you ever have a problem with your remote, you need to be able to hook into it some way. Now, another thing is, if you can see, almost every winch has this. You can see where it has the gear drive in and out. You want to make sure that turns in and out, because sometimes they can get stuck. So you want to make sure it free spools, because you need to be able to free spool it to pull your cable out. So when you go to check the winch, turn it to free spool, pull the cable out, turn it back, and then winch it back in. But then winch it back out again. Like I said, winch it back out again and make sure that the motor's working both directions. You want to winch it back out again. Now on this trailer here, and most of these trailers, they have a toolbox. So you want to open and shut the door on the toolbox. You want to make sure your latch works. You want to see about getting a key. If you don't have a key to it and it's locked, man, you're going to spend some time. You're going to end up having to drill all these things out and all kinds of stuff, or drill the lock out. So if they don't have the key and it's locked, that's going to cost you some money. So you'll make sure you reduce the price by what it's going to cost you to get that going. If they don't have the key. If it's not locked and they don't have the key, you can always get a key made. But if it is locked, because you can buy that piece right there. So the next thing you want to check is, obviously, make sure your safety chains are on it. If it's a gooseneck, if it's fifth wheel, kingpin, you don't really have to check that. But, you really should. If it has the chains, check them, make sure they're on there good. Now, the other thing is, you want to make sure what your box looks like, right? Your emergency brake box. You want to make sure it has a pin in it. See this cable, the emergency brake cable? It goes in right here and the pin comes out and in. You want to pull it out and you want to put it back in. And that's exactly what a state trooper is going to do if you get pulled over. They're going to pull that out, then they're going to have you drive forward and see if it locks the brakes up. If it doesn't lock the brakes up, they're going to put you out of service, or at minimum give you a ticket for it. So, and this one doesn't have a spare here, but if it has a spare, you want to check the spare, you want to see if it's dry rotted. You also want to check the tires on the trailer, see if they're dry rotted. If you can see the DOTs is great. You want to ask them about the DOT. You want to see what year the tires are. Now, as we come up here to the front, this is a gooseneck. So if you're buying a gooseneck, you basically want to look at the operation, and they mostly operate the same way. So this one has a lock system. This goes down, locks into the hole, it locks it up. Then when you go to take it off, it slides back over, and as you can see right here, you're going to pick it up, push it over into there. But then you want to make sure that the bottom part is moving freely. Now, if you check out the actual gooseneck part, see how this one feels a little loose? Well, these bolts are tight, right? But that's okay if it's a little bit loose inside there, because the bolts are holding it. It's just they're holding it on one side. But if you check this and the bolts are loose, make sure they'll tighten down, because if they don't tighten down, that might be a problem. Make sure your pin's in there, make sure the cotter pin is holding the pin in so it doesn't fall out. Now, another good thing to check, and I won't be able to show you here, but if you look inside of there, make sure there's grease in there. If there's not grease in there and they haven't been greasing it, could have some excessive wear, which could create something on the ball. Now, I've got a kingpin. I'll just also show you the kingpin adapter in a little bit and show you some of the things that go on with the kingpin adapter. So this is the kingpin adapter for a gooseneck. If the trailer you're looking at has a kingpin on there, you want to really make sure you look at these welds, because sometimes they can crack. Look close and see if they're cracked in any way. And of course here you want to see if there's any damage along in here caused, because there's one thing for sure, if that kingpin is damaged anywhere in here, it can absolutely ruin a kingpin hat, the receiver part. It can ruin it. So when you're inspecting this wire, one thing you want to do is make sure that this is not for some reason worn off, broken off, or damaged. Because when this plugs into your truck, the cover on your 7-pin holds that to hold it in place, whether it's the one in the bed or on the bumper. So if that's worn down for any reason, sometimes these things will be left on, somebody didn't plug it in correctly, this will drag on the ground, it'll wear the end of it off, something snagged it and broke it off. But if that's not on there, you might have to replace this entire pigtail. Again, you want to inspect it for damage. If you find any cracks in it, worn spots in it, like it was drug under the truck for a while, anything like that could cause the lights to malfunction. Even if they're not malfunctioning currently, that could be happening. So when you look at the stickers, obviously they got these, which are, just telling you that they're members of the National Trailer People and all that stuff. But on the inside is what you really want to look for. Make sure it has a DOT inspection. Now this one's kind of old, so it's kind of worn off. You want to look here, and right up in here, you can see what your weight ratings are. Trailers get rust on them, like this one does. This is not anything to worry about, like that. And those mesh deck trailers, those mesh decks are world worse about getting some rust on the mesh deck. And there's nothing to worry about with that. It's just surface rust that is going on there. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Then of course you want to do your overall condition of the trailer. Are the lights sticking out, hanging out, are they broken, and things like that. You want to make sure you get enough tire. If this was a 23,000 pound trailer and we were going to carry 23,000 pounds on it, we want to make sure those are 10 or 14 ply tires. But I usually recommend 14 plies on pretty much everything out there, which means if you buy it and it has 10 plies, you're going to have to go out and buy yourself a set of 4 to 6 or 8 14 ply tires. So figure that in your expense when you go to buy it. Now when you're looking at the tires, you want to obviously check the tread on the tires. But one of the things you want to do when you're looking at the tires is, and again, at how many axles. Typically when you see 3 axles on them, the back tire is usually the skid tire, so it's pivoting on the center tire, and the back tire and that front tire are tending to slide, so it can cause problems in the tread. Look on here, and you want to look for tread wear, right? So if you look on here, and you can see there's tread on the outside, but see how the tread fades off on the inside? That could be a clear indication that the axle, either the axle stub is bent or the whole axle sitting on its suspension carrier is twisted. So you want to make sure that you look at the tread wear for that. Now, if you get one that the tread wear is kind of chopped up, that's not a big deal. It's probably chopped up because it had some flat spots from either skidding because they had too much gain on it, caused a flat spot and it's been hopping ever since. It can cause all kind of funky wear. That I wouldn't worry too much about. But what you really want to worry about is that condition right there. For some commentary, buying a used trailer can be treacherous, obviously, because of the things I just told you. These are things that are easily checked. There can be stress and fatigue in the metal that you can't see. There's no way to find that. There can be other things that go on with it, like we just talked about on the axles on this trailer behind me, about if the axles aren't straight or not, you can end up going through a lot of tires. Talk about something real quick on a used trailer. Do they finance used trailers? There are places that finance used trailers. Will the bank finance a used trailer? Probably not. So you'll probably have to do a personal loan to finance a used trailer. Are there leases you can do lease to own? Yes, that's some of what I do is lease to own. So there's lots of different ways to buy a used trailer. It was at a point there where new trailers were at a premium. I mean, 2020 hit, man, you had to get on a waiting list, sometimes a year to get a trailer. So used trailers shot up in price. And then when people were buying the new trailers, they were spending a lot of money on them, right? So what happens is that all those new trailers that people paid $25,000 for this new trailer that was $18,000 the year before, and they want to sell it now, they got 25 grand tied up, so they're going to want more. Both the new and used trailer prices have gone way up. So don't be surprised when you see them. Now, there's a lot of trailers out there on the market that are like dirt cheap. These people are giving them away. You see, I saw a 3-car hauler the other day, said, 3-axle, 3-car hauler, said $5,000. You know, $5,000. 3 axles, 3 sets of brakes, 3 sets of tires, probably not an alignment problem, probably a brake problem. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there that could happen and go wrong with that to make up the difference between the $5,000 that trailer is being sold for and the $10,000 or $11,000 it probably should be sold for, based on what the new ones are. So always be careful. If something seems too cheap, it probably is too cheap. And I can tell you that what's out there right now for sale and used, a lot of it's pretty junky. So do your diligence. Go over the things we just looked at. Thanks for watching.